How to get rich in a recession before it's too late. Did you know that the world's richest people weren't made during boom times, but during the toughest of times? It's true. While the majority tremble before recession, the astute see it as a golden opportunity that appears only once a decade. We've been taught wrong. A recession isn't a time to cower and wait. It's the time to boldly step forward and take action. I vividly remember those dark days, watching my assets dwindle day by day. Back then, all I could do was blame myself and hope things would get better. But then, a chance encounter with an elderly man who had weathered many storms completely changed my perspective on hardship. He told me, "Son, in this life, crises are like winter. The wise are not those who avoid winter, but those who know how to sow seeds in the snow." Today, I want to share with you 7 valuable lessons I've learned. Not from books or theories, but from the painful and sweet experiences of life. These lessons have helped me not only overcome difficulties, but also find opportunities in the darkest of times. And the last lesson, in particular, will surprise you, because most of us are doing the exact opposite. If you've ever tossed and turned, worrying about your financial future in these uncertain times, comment ready. So I know you're also searching for the light at the end of the tunnel, just like I was. The first thing the old man taught me was an old Jewish saying: when blood runs in the streets, that's when the wise start shopping. It sounds cruel, but it contains a profound philosophy about the nature of opportunity. While everyone is panicking and selling, those who understand see opportunities that others don't. They understand that the fear of the crowd is the source of the greatest opportunities. Rothschild once said something I'll never forget: the best time to buy is when there's blood in the streets. He wasn't talking about cruelty, but about the ability to see real value when others only see fear. History has proven this hundreds of times. The best assets, the greatest opportunities, always appear when prices are at their lowest. Recessions create mass panic, a psychological phenomenon that causes people to sell assets below their true value. This is when the smart ones act, because they understand that prices at this time reflect emotions, not value. There's one thing I've learned through years of observation. The market always fluctuates between 2 extremes: excessive greed and excessive fear. And it's at these extremes that the greatest opportunities arise. Instead of letting emotions dictate, smart people prepare a list of quality assets they want to own and patiently wait for the right moment. They maintain a reserve fund not to hoard, but to act when opportunities arise. They learn to analyze the true value of assets, not based on emotions or market rumors. And most importantly, they train their minds to be able to step in when others are stepping out, to be able to buy when others are selling. However, I soon realized that having a reserve fund alone is often not enough to take advantage of truly great opportunities. The best assets, the most promising projects, often require more capital than one person can accumulate. This is where I learned the second lesson, a lesson that completely changed the way I view using other people's money to build my own future. Most of us are taught from a young age that debt is bad and should be avoided at all costs. Our parents, with all their love, instilled in us the idea that we should live within our means. But the Jewish people, a people with a long tradition of commerce, had a completely different saying. Smart people know how to borrow other people's money to build their own future. They're not talking about reckless borrowing, but about the art of using financial leverage. When the market is tough, an interesting thing happens. Interest rates often drop to their lowest levels. Governments and central banks do this to stimulate the economy, but inadvertently, they create a golden opportunity for those who know how to use financial leverage wisely. The rich understand something that the majority don't. There are 2 completely different types of debt. Consumer debt, money borrowed to buy luxury cars, designer clothes, expensive vacations. These things make you poorer every day. Investment debt, money borrowed to buy assets that can generate income, to learn income-generating skills, to build a business. These things help you get richer over time. This reminds me of an old fable my grandmother used to tell. Once upon a time, there was an old man who raised chickens in the village. Every day, when the chickens laid eggs, he didn't eat them all like the others, but always set aside a portion to hatch chicks. The neighbors often laughed at him for being foolish, for being hungry, but refusing to eat the eggs. They said, "This old man is so strange. He has fresh eggs but doesn't eat them." But the old man just smiled and continued his work. After a while, when his flock multiplied, he had enough eggs to eat, to sell, and still had enough left to continue expanding his flock. Meanwhile, the neighbor still had to buy eggs from the very old man they had once mocked. From that story, I understood that I had to learn to clearly distinguish between debt for consumption and debt for investment. Only borrow money when you are absolutely certain that the asset has the ability to generate income that exceeds the interest you have to pay. Master all the terms of the loan agreement. Have a detailed and realistic repayment plan, and always keep your debt ratio at a level you can control even in the worst case scenario. But then I also realized that no matter how much money you have and how smart you are about financing, if you lack skills and knowledge, everything becomes meaningless. Warren Buffett once said something I remember for years. The best investment you can make is an investment in yourself. This statement led me to the third realization, perhaps the most important of all I've learned. There's a folktale I often tell young people. Once upon a time in a small village, there were two blacksmiths of the same age and talent. When a great famine struck the region, the first blacksmith panicked and hastily hid a little gold he had saved. He thought that by holding on to this gold, he would overcome the hard times. The second blacksmith, however, had a completely different idea. He used all his savings to learn new forging techniques, advanced technologies that he had never known before. Those around him thought he was crazy. How could he spend all his money in such difficult times? But when the famine passed and life gradually returned to normal, what happened? The first blacksmith still had only his old gold, now depleted because he had to use it to survive. The second blacksmith, with the new skills he had learned, became the best blacksmith in the region. Everyone came to him to order the most sophisticated products. He not only earned more money than before, but also created a reputation, a sustainable value. In difficult times, when everyone has tightened their belts and cutting costs, that's the golden time to invest in yourself. Learning costs go down. There's more free time to learn, and most importantly, there's less competition because most people are hunkering down. The job market is changing at breakneck speed. New technologies are constantly emerging, but those with the right skills and adaptability always find opportunities, even in the most difficult circumstances. I identified the three most important skills in my field and decided to invest time in learning them in depth during the recession. I took advantage of low-cost online courses, actively participated in professional communities to learn from those who came before me, and most importantly, practice regularly to turn knowledge into real skills. I created a detailed learning plan with specific, measurable goals, and I always track my progress. However, one reality I had to face was that good skills are useless if no one knows about them. You can be the best in your field, but if no one knows you, opportunities will never knock. This is when I discovered the fourth thing, a lesson that arguably changed my life. In difficult times, it's not how much money you have, but how many of the right people you know. The Jewish people have a beautiful tradition that I admire greatly. In the most difficult times, when the entire community is struggling, they don't forget to help each other. They share information, share opportunities, and are always ready to lend a helping hand to those in the community. Not because they don't know how to compete, but because they understand something profound. In today's world, strength doesn't come from individual competition, but from the strength of the network. There's a Jewish teaching that I cherish and always remind myself of. When you help others climb, you're already standing in a higher position. This teaches us a very important life philosophy. Building relationships is not a zero-sum game. It's not about taking from others, but about giving and creating value for others. When you help others succeed, you also create lasting alliances for yourself. During a recession, one interesting thing I realized is that the best opportunities are often not widely advertised. They are shared through personal networks, from one person to another, from long-standing, trusted relationships. People prefer to do business with those they know and trust, especially in uncertain times. Networking not only helps you find hidden opportunities, but also provides valuable market information, advice from practical experience, and, equally importantly, moral support during the toughest times. I learned to build relationships sincerely and sustainably. Instead of just thinking about receiving, I always ask myself what I can give, sharing my knowledge and experience with those who might need it, always being ready to help others when they are in trouble, and most importantly, keeping in regular, sincere contact with everyone in my network, actively participating in professional groups not only to learn but also to contribute, volunteering for community projects to meet people with similar values, and always listening more than speaking. As the ancient saying goes, give before you receive, and good relationships need to be nurtured from ordinary days, not just when you need them. Along with building relationships, I also gradually realized an equally important fact. No matter how good your relationships are, no matter how skilled you are, if you don't know how to protect and allocate what you have wisely, all your efforts can vanish overnight. A Chinese elder with over half a century of business experience once shared with me the story of the wise farmer that I will never forget. He said, "The wise farmer, even with limited land, never plants just one type of crop. He understands that nature is unpredictable. Some years there's a lot of rain. Some years there's drought. Sometimes pest attack. If he only plants one type of crop, and that crop has problems, the whole family will face difficulties. But if he plant a variety of crops, some that like water, some that are drought tolerant, some that are pest resistant, then when one type has problems, the others can still feed the family." This is the fifth lesson about the art of smart diversification that I learned. But diversification doesn't mean blindly spreading your assets everywhere like sprinkling pepper. Many people misunderstand this concept and end up with too many small investments that they can't manage effectively. Smart diversification is the art of allocating assets into groups that have a low correlation with each other, meaning that when one asset group falls in price, another group may rise or at least not be affected in the same direction. During a recession, this phenomenon is even more pronounced. Some assets will depreciate sharply, but others will become safe havens and even increase in value. Ray Dalio, one of the world's greatest investors, has a wise saying that I always remind myself of. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, but don't have so many baskets that you can't manage them. This sounds contradictory, but is actually very logical. You need enough diversification to reduce risk, but not so much dispersion that you lose focus and can't track effectively. I learned to divide my assets according to a formula I call 3/3. 1 part for safety, low-risk assets to protect principal, 1 part for growth, investments with high potential for long-term returns, and 1 part for opportunity. Capital take advantage of special opportunities that only appear during difficult times. The specific ratio of each part will vary with age, personal circumstances, and market conditions, but this principle of balance is always maintained. I also learned to periodically review and adjust this ratio according to market conditions, but never change it emotionally. However, there's a skill I realize is more important than asset allocation, more important than having skills or a network of relationships. To truly succeed in turbulent times, I needed to master a special art, reading the crowd psychology and having the courage to go against them when necessary. This is the 6th lesson, perhaps the most difficult to implement. My grandfather, a man who had experienced many ups and downs of history, once told me an old story about the umbrella seller that I'll never forget. Once upon a time, in a crowded market, there was an old man who sold umbrellas. The strange thing was that whenever the sun was shining brightly, when no one was thinking about buying an umbrella, he stocked up on the most umbrellas. Other vendors often laughed at him, thinking he didn't understand business. "Who buys umbrellas in this sunny weather?" they said. "This old man must be senile." But the old man just smiled and continued his work. He understood something that others didn't. The weather always changes, and when a sudden rain comes, which always happens in tropical climate, everyone will need an umbrella immediately. And as expected, when sudden showers poured down, while all the other vendors had no goods to sell, the old man became the only one who could supply umbrellas to the entire market. Not only did he sell his goods, but he could also sell them at a higher price than usual due to the scarcity. This story taught me a profound lesson about the nature of success in business. To succeed, sometimes we have to have the courage and confidence to do things that the majority consider crazy or unreasonable. The financial market, like the weather, is driven primarily by two basic human emotions: greed and fear. When the crowd is driven by greed, it pushes prices up irrationally. When the crowd is driven by fear, they sell off and push prices below their real value. Smart people learn to recognize these psychological signals and have the courage to act against the crowd. Benjamin Franklin, one of the wisest men in American history, has a profound teaching that I often remind myself of. When the well's dry, we know the worth of water. Similarly, when the market is in recession, when everyone is panicking, we truly understand the value of opportunities that we cannot access in normal times. I spent a lot of time learning how to observe and analyze market sentiment through various channels. Following market sentiment indicators, numbers that indicate whether investors are feeling optimistic or pessimistic. Reading the news is not just for information, but also to feel the general mood of society. Observing crowd behavior. When people start talking about this time is different, when everyone becomes a financial expert, that's usually when I become cautious. Conversely, when people say all hope is lost, when the news is all pessimistic, that's when I start looking for opportunities. Most importantly, I must constantly practice controlling my own emotions so as not to be swept away by the general psychological wave of the crowd. And finally, there's a paradox, the seventh lesson, that when I share with people, most are surprised, even disbelieving. It's the thing that shocked me the most throughout this personal finance learning journey. We've been taught from a young age that in tough times, the right thing to do is tighten our belts, cut all unnecessary spending, and live frugally until hardship passes. This is the advice of parents of society, and it sounds very reasonable. But there's a stark truth I've learned through years of observation and experience. The truly wealthy, those who have weathered many economic cycles, actually spend more during recessions, not less. Sounds crazy and contradicts all conventional advice, right? But the truth is, they don't spend to splurge or satisfy personal desires. They spend to invest, to take advantage of opportunities that only appear during difficult times. During a recession, everything becomes cheaper, from real estate, stocks of good companies, to professional services, and even talented human resources. This is the best time to expand, to invest, to prepare for the upcoming recovery, while most competitors are hunkering down and cutting back. The wealthy understand a fundamental principle that few consider. To make money, you first have to know how to spend money wisely. But they spend with a clear strategy, with careful calculation, not with emotion or impulsiveness. There's a meaningful Jewish teaching that I often quote. In winter, seeds are valuable because they are scarce, but in spring, those same seeds become invaluable because they produce crops. This teaches us about the importance of investing in the future, even in difficult times. Even in difficult times. I learned to distinguish clearly and sharply between expenses and investments. Expenses are the money you spend without expecting a return, like luxurious dining, expensive entertainment, buying unnecessary things to satisfy immediate emotions. These need to be drastically cut during hard times. But investments are the money you spend with the expectation of long-term benefits, like buying discounted assets, learning valuable new skills, building and expanding your network, or investing in your health to be able to work effectively for a long time. These should not only not be cut, but should be increased during a recession. The decision to apply this principle completely changed my life, not because of the money I earned from those investments, although they were also significant, but because of the invaluable lesson I learned about the nature of risk and opportunity. I understand that in this life, the biggest risk is not taking calculated risks, but not taking any risks at all. Absolute safety is an illusion, and try to avoid all risks can cause you to miss the most important opportunities in life. Looking back on those years, I understand that a recession is not a disaster to be avoided, but an opportunity disguised in a cloak of hardship. These 7 lessons not only helped me overcome the most difficult times in my life, but also turned those dark moments into a solid foundation for success in the years that followed. As Confucius' immortal teaching says, no winter lasts forever, no spring skips its turn. The important thing is how we prepare for the coming spring, even during the harshest winter days. I want to challenge you to do one thing. Choose at least 2 of these 7 lessons and start applying them seriously, starting next week. Don't wait until the storm actually hits to start preparing, because by then it may be too late. The Jewish people have a very wise saying, dig a well before you're thirsty, and this has never been truer than now, as we face major upheavals in the global economy. If today's stories and lessons have ignited in you the determination to turn hardship into opportunity, comment, Ready to Thrive, and share with me which lesson touched your heart the most, which lesson made you rethink your approach to life and personal finance. I always believe that when we share sincere experiences and deep reflections, we not only learn from each other, but also create a supportive community, inspiring each other on the path of self-development. In the next video, I'll go deeper and tell you about 5 early warning signs to recognize an impending recession, subtle signals that veteran investors, those who have gone through many economic cycles, always keep a close eye on. And more importantly, I will share specific, detailed preparations for each stage of the economic cycle. Let me know what other topics you want to explore, so I can share stories and experiences that best suit your needs and interests. Finally, I want to remind you of something my first teacher, the old man I mentioned at the beginning of the story, told me on a cold winter afternoon. My son, in everyone's life, difficulties will come at least 3 to 4 times. That's a natural law no one can avoid. The question is not whether they will appear or not, but when they knock, will you welcome them as fearsome enemies to be avoided, or as strict but valuable teachers who come to teach you lessons that cannot be learned anywhere else? Your future is not determined by what happens to you, but by how you react, how you respond to what happens. Always remember that the seemingly small, insignificant decisions you make today are the first bricks that build the foundation for tomorrow's success. And sometimes, the greatest opportunities, the most important turning points in life, are hidden right in the most difficult and challenging moments. Be prepared in mind and skill to welcome them.